Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Tea Time. I'm a liar, this is Coffee, and we have patch notes. Whew. The new Terran unit got talked about. The Reaper got a new ability called Grenade that pushes things back and does some damage. That is so cool. It's counterplay. There's counterplay all over the place. There's like dodging, and hopefully the projectile speed is slow enough to promote like really nice counterplay, and it's not just like BAM! Grenade in your face. But, you know, if it is BAM! Grenade in your face... Anyway, let's hope it's not. Hey. And the pushback is very visually intuitive for spectators, which is nice. It's all sort of very clear. It'll be an explosion. People know what grenades are. It just sort of makes sense from a spectator's point of view. And it sounds like it's a target ground ability. I'm really a big fan of any ability that targets the ground because it makes this really big possibility for decision-making and planning and pushing and molding the battlefield to be advantageous for you in the same way that Blinding Cloud is a target ground ability that does very similar things. So this is going to be like a pushback style, which is really cool, and I'm super excited for it. Mineral amounts change from 100% 50% to 100% 60%. This makes zero, I guess this makes 10%. The difference that this makes is so tiny. It really is. It also messes with the gas to minerals ratio again, which is, I feel like all of these economy changes should be staying in balance with the mineral to gas ratio. I could be wrong. Maybe they're also trying to change the mineral to gas ratio, but I feel like that's just being overlooked right now. And it's kind of a critical thing, right? How much minerals and how much gas per base is a thing that matters to, I think, a large extent. So I think that sort of keeping the percentages the same between how much gas and how many minerals per base is kind of important and is slightly being overlooked right now. And so Blizzard had a post, David Kim had a post about why they weren't going to go ahead and test the Team Liquid suggested double harvest economy. And part of that was they want to focus in on the method they're already trying, which is messing with the amount of minerals per base allowed in order to control expansion timing. I hope that after more testing, and if this testing should show not really great results, which 10% change, I don't think it's going to show very interesting results. I don't think it's going to change very much. Hopefully they will consider changing the efficient number of workers per base from 16 to something smaller. That is my hope. Whatever solution might be, right? I'm not totally sold on double harvesting or triple harvesting or any kind of harvesting. The main thing for me is that the number of workers that are efficient, not maximal, but efficient per base needs to be a number that's less than 16. 16 has already been proven to not work, and that needs to be adjusted. And that's different, right? Number of minerals per base and number of workers to efficiently, not maximally, but efficiently saturate a base are different. They're different levers to pull. You can do both of them. You can do neither of them. You can do any sort of balance, and hopefully Blizzard will start experimenting with that second option. They've been doing a lot of experimenting over here with this option, but not as much over here. So hopefully they do some of that. The warp-in mechanic is back to Heart of the Swarm style, except the damage is still there. I think the damage of 200% while warping in is really nice. It makes a lot of sense, right? The unit is vulnerable because it's all the molecules of the unit aren't even really there yet. So it doesn't have really that armor, that protection that it should have, so it makes more damage. It also is cool from a gameplay perspective because it's sort of like, okay, you're weak while you're warping in. You can't just warp in on top of everything all the time, and it makes a little bit of decision-making happening, a little bit of tension going on, which is nice. But what I was really hoping for was more nerfs to the warp-in mechanic and buffs to gateway units to compensate for that. It'd be really cool for that to happen. So get a little bit more defender's advantage in the Protoss matchups, and get a little bit more just core strength, like 10. Give me 10 hit points in the Zealot. Just 10 hit points. It's not that much, right? The Adept's weapons damage point change from... Didn't we already do this? I'm having this crazy deja vu feeling. I haven't actually checked it up because I'm an irresponsible human, but seriously, someone go check that up. I thought this was already supposed to have happened. If not, great. Again, I can't get into the editor yet and look at the variables and see what's actually going on in there. I have to sort of guess at it, which is mildly frustrating, and we can't make custom maps or mods in the beta. Please let us do that, Blizzard, please. But great. I really hope that this happens this time around. Lowering damage point, especially for a unit like the Adept, makes a lot of sense. I would prefer a lot lower damage point than 0.167, which is the default. I'd really like that default to come down, but Cyclones can no longer target air, and this is kind of interesting to me because I feel like the Cyclone is having the biggest impact right now in TVP. I know it's kind of a narrow focus, but that is really where a lot of the complaining is going on. As a result, Protoss have been opening up with like Phoenix to keep up with the Cyclones and pick them up and stuff like that. So this just sort of pushes that more in the direction of you really, really should get Phoenix. They're really great. The early game, I don't know. It's kind of a little bit weird. It makes them less of an all-around unit, which I'm down with, right? Let's make the Cyclone a less all-around unit. We don't want Warhound 2.0, which they're not, but we don't want that, right? It is an interesting way to go about making the Cyclone a less all-around unit, a lot more than like decrease the hit points or decrease the DPS or decrease the speed, which are, you know, Destiny brought that up in a recent episode of the late game. But yeah, so I'm very interested to see exactly how that works out. I don't have a strong opinion on whether or not this is going to be awesome or shitty, but hopefully it is indeed awesome. The Ravager got a double nerf. So first of all, the DPS is back down to roach areas, and also the weapon range is down to roach areas. I really like the decrease in DPS. I've been actually hoping for that for a little while now, and it has come through, so yes. But the decrease in range is going to make it a little bit more difficult to control. It would, at least 5 range would have been kind of nice, just because the 120 hit points of the Ravager make it, you know, a little bit of a glass cannon. A lot less now that it doesn't do the DPS that comes with the identity of glass cannon, but it still does that mortar round shot, right? That corrosive bile. So having it in the back line makes a lot of sense, and by giving it a 4 range, it's more likely it's going to get bumped up to the front line when you do like auto attacks and stuff, which sort of artificially forces you to or arbitrarily forces you to control it more specifically, maybe put it in its own control groups. That way it's back and doesn't get killed off. So maybe that's ends up being a good thing overall. But I do kind of like the idea of it being a little bit longer range unit, so it ends up being in that back line. But, you know, we'll see exactly how that turns out. Really excited as usual. I mean, this gets kind of repetitive, right? At the end of every change, I'm like, I'm really excited to see how this works out because it's true. I'm sorry if it's repetitive, but it's true. I'm here to tell true things. The true things are happening right here. And finally, the Swarm Host. The Swarm Host is 200, 103. That's crazy, right? So they're just all the way back to the old cost, the cost of old, in supply and gas and minerals, totally back to the way it used to be. So it is a much more massable unit once again, but keep in mind 100 gas is still a pretty hefty amount of gas, right? So if you're going to be spending that 100 gas, that's still quite an investment, right? And it no longer requires the upgrade for the Flying Locusts. Not a huge fan of that. Ideally for me, there would be 2 buttons to press on the Swarm Host, one to make Ground Locusts, one to make Flying Locusts, or make it so that the Locusts don't swoop down into melee range on something, but swoop down into their range. That's kind of something that I would like to see. But I do understand the idea of, like, you want to swoop down to melee range, so that way if you have a ton of Locusts, they'll, like, all instantly be in range. So I get that. But it would be nice to have a little bit more control over that exactly, because I prefer ground locusts to flying locusts whenever I'm on the ground, basically. Locust health is down as well, so this pushes the Swarm Host into more burstiness. So the Locust will die faster, and you got to get the damage in quick and get out, and well, not really get out because they'll all explode, but you know what I mean. Finally, last change, the Swarm Host burrow move at 2 speed? Like, what? And that's not like a what, like, oh man, that's awful. That's like, that's going to be really interesting, right? So now Zerg have 2 units that can burrow, move, drop up a bunch of temporary units, and get out of there. And just the idea of, like, seeing them move is kind of, right? This is like little bubbles just like moving around, I think is going to be hilarious. I just kind of want to see that happen. But yeah, so they're pushing the swarm host into this more harassy unit, and they're making it not so incredibly expensive. I really think the sort of more gas than minerals ratio should be reserved for spellcasters, and I wouldn't really count the swarm host as a spellcaster. So I kind of like that it's moved back into this area of, okay, you know, it's this harassed unit, it is expensive, it's more bursty, it's effective, it does its thing. So yeah, hopefully we'll see some more swarm hosts. Whoever would have thought, you know that Blizzard has done something right when I say hopefully we'll see more swarm hosts, right? You know, because I like the new swarm host. I'm interested in it. I think that it's an interesting avenue to explore, and I'm really looking forward to it. There's that repetition again, that repetition of truth. Yeah, yes, on the JaKaTaK show, you will see the repetition of truth. And tea. Oh, fuck, I lied. This is coffee.